Think Global. The platform is powered by the Covenant Nation.
The platform.
Yeah, over and over again. Like, when he was talking about the perception or the relative position of your body mass and gravity, I'm like, right now, my thoughts, I'm not able to reconcile my thoughts. There were just too many light bulb moments going off, and so you can actually catch the replay on YouTube. So for those of us, and I believe that should be every one of us, we need to listen to these things over and over again and juice it out for our individual lives and businesses and careers. Our next speaker is Jumoke Adenowo. Woohoo! She's a prominent architect and philanthropist, described as Africa's Starchitect in a 2014 interview with CNN. Born in 1968, Jumoke enrolled to study architecture in the University of Ife at the age of 14. And she also gained her master's degree in architecture from the same university. Jumoke Adenowo's architecture portfolio includes a host of multinational and Nigerian clients, including Coca-Cola, L'Oreal, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and a bunch of other players in the financial services and pharmaceuticals. In 2018, she was recognized by the Royal British Institute of British Architects, RIBA, as one of the most inspirational women in architecture today. She's also the recipient of the Cambridge African Society Award and has been recognized as one of the top 100 most influential Nigerians. She's a philanthropist and founder of Awesome Treasures, an intercontinental philanthropic foundation recognized by the United Nations with a mission to raise 1,000 leaders by 2030, working with women and youth. She's an alumnus of a number of prestigious institutions, including Harvard Business School, the Yale School of Management, the IASC Business School, University of Navarra, Barcelona, and the Lagos Business School Chief Executive Program. Just before I bring her up, we will play a video, and I should also announce that for those of us who have been in our online audience, you're not excluded from the Q&A that would happen right after the last speaker, which is Mr. Leke Alder. And the link to send your questions is bit.ly, so that's bit.ly/questions _ the platform engine. I'll just take that quickly again. It is bit.ly/questions _ the platform engine. That's also the link to send your questions, even if you're here. So I'll just turn the stage over right now to Mrs. Olajumoke as she starts off her session with a video. Thank you.
Jumoke Adenowo is a multiple award-winning architect with over 3 decades of industry experience. Described as Africa's Starchitect and Trailblazer when profiled by CNN and BBC. She is one of Africa's most outstanding architects and the only female in this elite category, christened the face of architecture in Nigeria by The Guardian. She has been featured in the world's foremost architectural journal, Architectural Record, and Forbes Women and Fortune magazine. In 2013, she was instituted into the Hall of Fame of Personalities of Black Ancestry by the University of West England, Bristol, among other global personalities of Black heritage. She is a quintessential polymath, chartered architect, academic laureate, philanthropist, entrepreneur, chartered arbitrator, author, and radio show host. She is also a member of the International Coalition of Apostolic Leaders. After gaining admission into Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife at the age of 14, she acquired the first distinction in Master of Science in Architecture in the university's history. She is also an alumnus of several institutions, including the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, the Yale School of Management, MIT, the IESE Business School, amongst other professional affiliations. She is a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Architects. Starting her career at Femi Majekudumi Associates, where she had the privilege of designing the Federal Ministry of Finance headquarters in Abuja. In 1994, she founded her own multi-award-winning architecture firm, AD Consulting, which specializes also in master planning of eco-sensitive developments. AD Consulting is Nigeria's most internationally awarded firm. She has been the principal partner from inception to date. In 1999, her passion for raising transformational leaders led her to establish the faith-based philanthropy Awesome Treasures Foundation, recognized by the United Nations and affiliated to the Edmundo Rothschild Foundation Family Philanthropy Platform. Awesome Treasures closely raises transnational leaders amongst youth and women towards an African renaissance. Awesome Treasures Foundation operates on 3 continents with initiatives impacting millions. Since 2011, she has hosted her own syndicated radio program and podcast on leadership, Voice of Change. She has been honored with numerous awards for her architecture and philanthropy. These include the Forbes Women Africa Entrepreneur of the Year 2020, the New African Businesswoman of the Year Award 2015, the Cambridge African Society Award, amongst several others. Adenowo is featured on several power lists, recognized as one of Africa's 50 most powerful women by Forbes Women Africa, one of Africa's 100 most powerful women by WIAW, Africa's most inspiring businesswoman by the Laboratoire d'Économie de l'Afrique, amongst others. She is the opening feature in renowned art historian Agatha Toromanov's latest publication on the world's greatest female architects in history. In 2019, she was appointed a visiting professor at the Technische Universität München, Germany's leading architectural program, where she was honored as a laureate and a guest scientist at the Chair of Theory, History of Architecture and Art and Design. Her academic articles have been published by leading architectural publishing houses, and her 12 published books include her first work of fiction, which has a cult following, Beyond My Dreams, Acts of the Holy Spirit, and Women as God Intended. She is a public speaker at international summits and conferences, including McKinsey & Co. Leadership Forum, Solve at MIT, Cambridge University African Society, the Global Women's Forum, Host the Kongs Munich, the Institute of Directors, and several other platforms. Jumoke has served on the jury and panels of global initiatives such as the Cartier Initiative for Women Awards. She serves on the boards of corporate entities, educational institutions, and charitable foundations. She is married to Olukorede, and they are blessed with 2 men. Ladies and gentlemen, Jumoke.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. It's a real honor to be here at this august. I salute the vision of Pastor Podriemade and his beautiful wife, Toyin. I don't want to pull rank, say my daughter, Toyin, from this kind of platform. Thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you for this great vision and all it's been doing. Thank you for being who you are, Pastor Podju. I do appreciate you. We celebrate you. My husband and I celebrate you. What do I do when speakers like this have gone before me? The only value I can add is to tell my own story, because I know nobody can tell my story like I can do. Right, Leke? That's the value I can add. So if we're going to look at today's topic, it is building a successful business in the climate we're in. And you ask what climate? I think it's the climate I've been rolling in since I was born. The climate where a naira was $1.60 when I first started going to America. I don't know what it is today because I'm not sure what it was before I started speaking. It might have changed while I was speaking. So I don't know what the exchange rate is, but if there was ever an interesting climate, it's a Nigerian climate. And how do you then build a successful business in such a climate as this? I would say first we need to understand what entrepreneurship really is. You know, we popularly believe that entrepreneurship means having the activity of setting up a business or businesses, taking on financial risk in the hope of profit. But really, the etymology of the word, the origin of the word entrepreneurship comes from the Latin. And it actually means to swim out, to grasp, to understand, to capture. It means grappling with the needs of your generation, of society, of your community. It means solving a problem. I would attempt the French. It's entreprendre. Just for you to know, I studied French small. You know, and what it really means is solving human problems. It's beyond profit. It goes beyond profit. It's innovatively solving problems. So profit is important because if it's not profitable, then it cannot be sustainable. But profit cannot be the motive. It must go beyond profit. When I was made New African Businesswoman of the Year, like almost 10 years ago, and I was giving a speech, I said, look, for Africans, entrepreneurship is a totally different kettle of fish. Why? Because for us, until our governments understand that the real natural resources of Africa are not the diamonds, the gold, the cobalt, the silicon, but the people in this room. When we understand that the real natural resources of Africa are the human beings of Africa, it now behoves the African entrepreneur to develop human capacity. Because the governments are not going to do it. We're the alternative government. So our offices are no longer just places for profit. They are centers for human capacity development. Our locations are not locations. They are our host communities. We must take it on ourselves to develop our continent until those who should do so, do so. So it's not about competition or making money. A lot of the things we do in Africa, especially in Nigeria, is about making money, really. You know, it's about what is moving, what is selling. So if it's event centers, we all rush into it. That is competition and not innovation. When we're thinking of real national development, then it means understanding what the problems are and solving it. Either it is moving it or selling not, you know, until we are innovating. That's what Microsoft and all is about. I see a problem and I want to solve it in a different way than it has ever been solved. And that is what builds nations, not red oceans of competition as we cannibalize the same market and we all do the same thing. We need to begin to think of what? Innovation. Novel ways of solving the same problems that have plagued us for so long. And then we need to ask ourselves, so what are the real problems in Nigeria? You know, I'm making this as simple as it can be because that's how I do it. You know, I can't speak plenty English, so I make it as simple as possible. Successful nations design even their national planning towards innovative problem solving. So what is the problem? Like somebody said, a whole campaign was run on corruption is the problem. And then they didn't quite solve the problem of corruption because it's more than corruption. It looks like the will to solve the problem seems to be part of the problem. So we think, when we look at it, we say, oh, it's education. Right now, ASU is on strike again. It's power supply. We saw it in the middle of Kule Shorenyo's presentation. In case we forgot, power supply. We say healthcare delivery. It's insecurity. It is national identity. We're not even too sure if we're a nation. Let's be honest. And by mistake, I said it one day on Arise TV. So I got home and I told my husband I was still asleep. I woke him up. I said, do you want to be a minister? He didn't answer. I said, if you want to be, it's finished. I've ended it. I just blew it. You know, because I have the habit of just speaking the truth, you know, and I blew it. So I said, forget it. You can't be minister again. So what is the root, really, of all the problems? It looks like it's leadership. So many countries, successful nations, begin with the end in mind. If leadership is the problem, we should be solving the problem of how do we raise a critical mass of transformational leaders in Africa. When you think of national planning and solving problems, think about, say, India. India understood, China understood that they had to leapfrog into the next century technologically. What do? You use mathematics. Mathematics is the pillar of every technological endeavor. Therefore, they teach their children maths, not in English, So they don't have to drag Pythagoras' theorem first through Chinese, then into English, and then maybe not understand it. They just teach it in Chinese. So you grab it straight. And then you think, oh, the Chinese are better at maths. It is deliberate. It is policy-oriented. So if we want to make sure that our businesses solve problems, maybe there should be tax incentives for businesses that actually solve problems versus businesses that just compete. But you understand what I'm saying. It should be a national planning matter from the very beginning. So I started in 1994. I was going to start a business. I wanted to be a great architect. So at 25, I didn't know any better. I started a business at Unicon, and the idea was I was going to be a great architect. It took me a few months to realize that you cannot be a great anything, entrepreneur, architect, or anything, in a subpar ecosystem. It's like you are trying to jostle to be on first class or in first class in a plane that is about to crash. We're all crashing. So you are driving your Maybach that you've made from your architecture on what? On your pothole reading roads. You are in your mansion, and you garrison yourself in your mansion as if you are in a prison. The person who is in Kirikiri is better off than you because of the number of doors you have to open, because you're afraid of the people coming for you. It became very clear that you cannot be a great anything in a subpar system. So I said, I'm going to focus on the real problem, and it is leadership. I thought maybe seminal buildings will work. Let me design the buildings and show people the way it is done so we can fix the ecosystem. I realized that one person does not have enough lifetimes to build enough seminal buildings to change the situation we're in. Well, I tried different things. I went into academia. You see, I became a visiting professor. Pastor Poju prefers to call me Doc. It's Prof, right? It's Prof. That was one thing I never thought I could beat my parents at, because both of them are professors. So when I became a professor, I said, Daddy, can you imagine? There are 3 professors in this family now. Okay, and my own is German. Yours is local. Mine is global. It's just what it is, you know. Anyway, so the answer was purpose-driven ventures. That's what it had to be. What is the purpose behind every venture that I go into? It is raising transformational leaders. It could be architecture. It could be Petra Pharma Properties. What does property have to do with leadership? Nothing. It's funding the initiative. What does Advantage Energy have to do with it? It is funding leadership initiatives. So we see that at 25, I decided to pivot from profit to purpose. Pivot from fame to purpose. It was not classy, it was not sexy, but I decided that that's what I was going to do. So whatever we do, leadership is that thread that runs through everything we do. Because I'm a polymath, so I have different expressions. But it is leadership that determines the decisions I take. Either I speak at the platform or not. It's in or out, depending on what does it have to do with raising transformational leaders. So leadership runs through everything we do, though it looks like the processes are different. The purpose remains the same always. 28 years on, 154 projects later, AD Consulting has a clear purpose linked to this raising transformational leaders, which is the problem of Africa. It's the real thing we lack. And we have decided that we must restore the confidence of a generation to solve its own problems. You see, because you cannot set a sat-nav when we have no origin and no location. You can't begin to venture forth when you don't know where you're coming from. And we have a whole generation who have subscribed to propaganda that has taught them that they don't have what it takes to solve their own problems. And Africa must evolve its own solutions. Now, come with me for a minute. There's not much time, but why must I be told through propaganda, through movies, through books, through every way that I'm an inferior being? If I am inferior, leave me alone. I will find out myself. I will take it again. You don't need to tell me that I cannot fly. All I need to do is try and fly. When I crash, I will realize I cannot fly. So why must the whole educational system, a whole colonialism, everything be designed to tell a race that they're inferior? It means somebody is afraid that if they are allowed to attempt it, they will discover that they are anything but inferior. Therefore, I said, it shall be our own aim to tell this race that not only do you have what it takes, your ancestors have proven that they have what it takes. Therefore, you have the DNA of leadership, the DNA of problem solving. The genes are in you. We've been doing it before we came into contact with any other civilization. So in 1427, when the ancient Benin Empire, which you can see at the bottom right corner, right? That's ancient Benin. When the Portuguese first met the ancient Benin Empire, it was a civilization where they said, even they had street lights that London did not have. It is in writing that London did not have. I say this to the diaspora because a lot of our critical mass are in the diaspora, so that when their children go to school the next day, they know of what stock they're made from. They know they're not refugees, they're immigrants. There's a difference between refugees and immigrants. You know that. The refugee has no option, the immigrant has one. And your host country knows the difference between a refugee and an immigrant. You are a refugee if you have no other option but to stay in that country you are in. So, in 1427, they came across Benin Empire and they thought, oh, haphazardly, planned, but everything else is going on well. The beauty of it, the interesting fact, was that many African cities were planned according to what we call fractal geometry. So the Europeans were gazing on a level of geometry that was beyond their comprehension. So inside what they thought was an African mess was a message. It took George Cantor in 1883, 400 years later, to begin to discover, a German, what fractal geometry was about. It was 500 years later in 1975 that Mandelbrot now began to understand there's such a thing as fractal geometry. So what your ancestors used to solve their problems then is now what is at the basis of neurolinguistics, neurology, information technology, econophysics, some very highfalutin names. But this is what is found indigenously in Africa all over. And what AD Consulting does is that we leverage on our own understanding of African heritage and African architecture to design buildings in this century that are relevant globally, showing the whole world that there are ideas that come not just from now, but from antiquity in Africa, to restore the confidence of the African in the African ability to evolve its own solutions. Raising transformational leaders. Like I said, it wasn't popular at that time to say you were starting a foundation. It was more like, are you Mother Teresa doing press-ups or what? In 1994, everybody was in a bank. That was the in thing to be. And there was this barefoot philanthropist in 1999 saying to herself that, okay, I have started a purpose-driven business, but we need a critical mass. Because when you say you are leading and you're alone, you're only taking a walk. Right? So I need to be able to lead a critical mass with me. So we started Awesome Treasures Foundation in 1999, recognized by the United Nations. We've had over 125 plus global leadership summits. What is the purpose of Awesome Treasures Foundation? Raising transformational leaders. So 125 plus global summits later, it's working. It's working because when the convener of the platform, the visionary himself, the leader of the covenant nation, wanted to choose a partner to recruit in this journey to change the face of the continent, he came to an awesome youth. Is it working or is it not working? It's an applause situation. It really is working. Because when leaders are looking for leaders, they know where to go. It's what it is, isn't it? Yeah, it's what it is. We've had over 10 annual summer leadership camps. And like I said, I just like when numbers speak because words don't cook rice. Numbers have their impact. 10 annual summer leadership summits. On the right, up the left corner there, you can see the girl with the interesting hairdo. Her name is Jumoke, and she's just rounding up geology in one of the leading universities in Nigeria. It's working. We're raising transformational leaders, shifting paradigms, over 1,700 of those. We use media. Why? Media. My goodness. Subtle and consistent paradigm shifter. You don't even know you are imbibing the ideas when you are imbibing the ideas. That's what media does. So take, for instance, Beyond My Dreams. I have 12 published books. Beyond My Dreams has a cult following. Beyond the fact that I get DMs with people crying at night because they're dreaming about the protagonist. Because when I write a novel, there are bands in the mouth of the protagonist. So it's like a romance on the surface, right? And the bands, the dialogue is heavy. It shakes. But you know, really, underneath, I'm actually talking about governance, about leadership. Talking about notions that people have never engaged, not thought about. Because they were too busy carrying Birkin bags and stuff. Federalism. We're talking about a resource control. We're talking about servant leadership. So we have this totally transgenerational book that 72-year-old generals are reading, 65-year-olds are reading, 13-year-old boys, instead of playing football, this is what they're reading. I met a 13-year-old girl who had read it 11 times. Myself, I thought it was plenty, But we have this idea sinking in transgenerationally, and it's really about national branding too, national identity, portraying Nigeria in a good light, not through rose-colored lenses, but this is a nation of good people, resourceful people who just have subpar leadership. Voice of Change, 15 million listeners every week. Podcast, broadcast. And also, of course, these are hardworking products because they're raising revenue streams for the foundation. Beyond My Dreams, I have donated to Awesome Treasures Foundation. In 1 month alone, it makes 13 million naira. These are the things that we're doing. We're talking about building a successful business in today's climate. A successful business must be purpose-driven. It might have different expressions, different processes. Use media, use summer camps, use architecture, use seminal buildings, but one thing remains. It is the purpose. The footprint speaks for itself. We're on 5 continents. South America, we're coming for you. The educational level of the Awesome Treasures, 66% of us are postgraduate level, and about 7.2% have a PhD, which is 6 times the percentage of the PhD in America. So we're a very cerebral nation. It's just what it is. Scattered over 28 industries, the very relevant and key industries where we need to intervene: health, government, science, and tech. The numbers speak, like I say, and I'll just take just one number here: 118,000 women. We're looking at, is it successful? Is it working? Does a purpose-driven business work? 118,000 women empowered through Awesome Treasures Foundation. I am not saying 118,000 men. The men too are empowered, but I will focus on the women. Why? Because when a woman is empowered, the nation is empowered. It is a fact. Don't clap yet. I'll explain why. When a man gets rich, he could buy a Bentayga or take a third wife. When a woman is empowered, she sends children to school. Her brothers, sisters goes to school. She builds the community. The money rotates within the community like 5 times before it exits. So if you're a woman here, you need to clap. You know the way we spend money. So 118,000 of such loosed into the ecosystem. That is success. We're talking about demonstrable transformational leadership. We measure, we calibrate, because we are recognized by the United Nations. We need to report back as to what we're doing. 33% have started a new venture, 39% service to the community, so about 72% are giving back in tangible ways that are actually creating income. What next then? I like keeping to time. It's part of leadership. Beyond My Dreams, we're amplifying the message. We have SALT, which is like a Kingdom Dynamics mentorship platform taking place this month. We've been in Joburg this year. We're going to Houston. We're going to be in London. We've been in Lagos. But what are we going to do? We want to amplify the message into a mini-series. So we make it accessible to everybody because it's about national branding. We want everybody to have access to it. What next again? On the architecture front, we want to future-proof the legacy. Make sure nothing touches it. And in an interesting turn of events, Rizzoli, which is the world's leading, you can check it, the world's leading design, architecture, art publisher, headquarters in Milan and on Fifth Avenue in New York, chose yours truly to be the first black architect that they're going to feature her work in. You can clap. Thank you very much. Now, what it means is that I have the mic. I have the mic. You can be sure it's not only about architecture. Your children in the diaspora will learn about Mansa Musa. But I'll be talking about the Great Mosque in Jenny. But they will understand that at a time there existed an African who was so rich, beyond Bill Gates, beyond Bezos, beyond whoever, who just passing to Mecca, he destroyed the economy of Egypt because of the gold he gave out. And when he saw he did it, magnanimous as he was, on his way back, he began to buy back his gold to restore equilibrium. Your children will know that such a person existed. That is what it means when you give the mic to a black African architect who understands the purpose of business and the purpose of the enterprise for what she's going to do. We're going to be gifting 1,000 copies to 1,000 schools of architecture. Why? Because there's a huge gap. You wouldn't believe that even in African schools of architecture, of which there are 133, there is no curriculum for studying African traditional architecture. You would think it does not matter, but I'll tell you it matters. When you say Black Lives Matter, it means black art matters. Why? The difference between an ape and a human is art, creativity, thinking, ideation, abstraction. Therefore, if I'm not capable of art, I'm still a gorilla. So if you say black life matters and black art matters, then black architecture must matter, because the minute you have architecture, civilization has started. It goes beyond subsistence. That means you now have monuments, you have temples, you have worship, you have monarchy, you have a palace. Architecture starts only when civilization starts. So when you agree that black people can come to the table and talk about their architecture for the first time, you are agreeing that we're not just gladiators who box and kill each other for your entertainment. We're not just those who sprint, and churn the wheels of your mass media. We think. I just want you to think, how many black philosophers do you know? That's because that's not supposed to be what we do. But now, the mic has been put in the hand of a black woman and say, we want to listen to your thinking, and they will hear our thinking. We're going to give 1,000 copies out, me and my partners in the diaspora, because the diaspora are involved in all these things we do, to 1,000 schools of architecture to fill that gap. Why? We want to make sure that the black race in diaspora has the confidence to venture. If you're not moored, you can't swim out. If you don't have an anchor, you cannot venture forth. Because at least if you lose your way, you know where to come back to. Therefore, you must know your origin and know it has been done before. There is precedence for what you want to achieve. It gives you confidence. Secondly, it will help those who are not black to overcome their bias. It is not their fault that they've been told time and time again that the black man cannot do it. But when they read and they find that, it's not true, then they can embrace us as equals. When we speak, they will listen. So this is changing the narrative. That is what is next in this purpose-driven business model. Changing the narrative. Finally, which is where I take the 5 minutes that's given to me to make 30 minutes. Finally, purpose-driven businesses are what stand in VUCA times. What's a VUCA time? We're talking about volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous times. It's an American military parlance. Basically, in Nigeria, that's what it means. VUCA could have meant Nigeria. So, it is people who are purpose-driven and who lead purpose-driven businesses that people trust in such times. And that's what makes for success. So the key purpose of a successful business is successfully solving a problem. It goes beyond profits. And guess what? These generations demand impact in their vocation. They demand that if there's going to be COVID and I'm going to go to work and wear a mask, I must be risking my life for something that is worth it. which is what I decided at 25, that, you know what, my life is not long enough to spend 30 years making money. Then I'll be 50. Then I'll wake up and decide, you know what, I should stand a foundation and give back. No. I want my life, my job to be my assignment. Every day, I want to be giving back. There's not enough time in my life to first make money, then think of giving back. And that's what this generation is about. Trust can be measured and trust can be increased. So Charles Green developed this equation, and I'd like to share it with us because it's very important. He says the sum of credibility and reliability and intimacy divided, of course, or undermined by self-orientation is what gives us trustworthiness. And what it just means is this. When you are credible, when you have the credentials, when you are actually more knowledgeable than your team, when you actually develop, you show competence. In one word, when you are a designer that knows how to sew, you know it now. Good. Thank you, because it happens sometimes. When a designer knows how to sew, you can control your tailors. Good. So reliability. When you say something, you do it. So for 27, 28 years, we pay salaries on the same day, regardless of what is happening. COVID, coup, whatever, you get your salary. Reliability. Intimacy. My team knows when we're paid and when we're not paid. So they know which governments to pray for and which ones, because they know who owes us. All this will make no sense if they thought I was narcissistic or self-focused. But they have seen selflessness over the years, that they will be paid first even if I'm not paid. In Awesome Treasures, they've seen over £1 million of my own money go into the philanthropy, and I've never earned a dime. They have seen me give away my books, my intellectual property, everything to fund. And I thought, maybe I didn't know what kind of impact it was making until 2020, when we had to go to all New York. And as I was taking off to go to New York, I see on the screen in the airport that New York was falling into a state of emergency. I had awesome leaders in New York and people I knew would be coming from all over the world for this summit. We didn't know what COVID was. We didn't. Nobody knew what it was. This was about the 7th of March. And I thought to myself, I can still go back. There should be, but there are people waiting for me. At least 2 or 3 people may turn up. And for those 2 or 3 people, I should be there, going at the risk of my life and all. But I landed in New York as the airports were closing all over the world. And I was assuring the people as I was going that we're doing all the best we know within the understandable science and all the revelation we have about this disease to safeguard your life. You can trust me. So I thought when I get into that hall in Manhattan, there would be like 3 or 4 people. To my shock, there was a full hall of people who had put their lives in their hands to trust me, to fly from all over the globe, to be at a summit because I asked them to be there. That was the day I knew that the journey of over 20 years was a success. We were no longer a business, a philanthropy. We were a movement. We were a movement. It was an awesome moment for me. So, as a side, the internal auditors come and then tell us that we grew by over 7 times financially in the middle of the pandemic. So you see, purpose-driven businesses can be profitable too. In fact, they can be explosively profitable. So I hope that somehow someone has found some validation to follow their dreams, to solve a problem, to leave a legacy, to start early, to be a barefoot philanthropist, just to live their truth because of my simple, accessible, relatable, entrepreneurial journey. Thank you very much. You've been a very good audience. Thank you.
Live local.